Ladies and gentlemen, Binnall of America!
And now, ladies and gentlemen, your host, Tim Binnall.
No commercials, no subscriptions, no network, no rules, and at the end of the day, my friends, no comparison. Welcome to another edition of BOA The Revival. You might call this the calm before the storm, literally and figuratively, as we're taping this before the hurricane sweeps over Florida. And you're hearing this 10 days before the Strange Realities Conference down in Nashville, Tennessee. So it's a very kind of weird, chill air of the vibe tonight on the program. Our guest is one of our good friends, a dear friend of mine, the one and only Adam Sayne. He's the creator of Conspirinormal, which has actually been around since 2012, which is really remarkable when you think about it.
Yep.
A long time, and a dear friend of mine, and one of the hardest working guys out there in the paranormal. He's I think back before we revamped and All of America revived it, we talked about I was talking with somebody about it. It was like, this podcasting thing is like being a distance runner, and you might, if you're kind of lazy or whatever, you're just trying to get back into it, you might go run a mile or whatever, and then be like, oh, I'm fucking done for like a week or whatever. But once you get going, you can become a distance runner, and you have to stick with it and do it all the time. And that's what Adam has done with Conspirinormal, 13 years now. So he's a masterful podcasting distance runner, to just completely mess up all those metaphors. So welcome back to the show, buddy. It's good to have you.
Thank you, Tim. It's good to be here, man. I'm always glad to be on Binnall of America.
Oh, dude,
and always glad to have you on my show as well. So, which
you are
on the show not too long ago, actually.
Absolutely, yeah. You guys are like the most I'm kind of like part of like a house guest or something. Like, you guys are always. You had me on more than any other show. I don't get a lot of invitations to other podcasts, which actually, between you, me, and the people listening, is actually kind of nice, because then you got to tape then you lose another evening of your week when I'm already fucking taping shows for Binnall of America. And it's like, all right, but I'm going to be on your show next week. But it's all part of sort of this bouillabaisse, this cross. I don't say crossbreeding, but crossing the streams, this mixing up of the different brands, I guess you could say, different shows. It's kind of at the heart of the Strange Realities Conference. It's a real coming together of like-minded friends in the paranormal down there in Nashville, right?
It is, and it's funny you mentioned that, because I was on Soraya's show, Where Did the Road Go, last night, and we were talking about how I found his show, and then just how, because of finding his show, I've met so many of the people that have become part of Strange Realities. I guess indirectly including yourself as well. So it's interesting how we've all kind of found each other in this weird little paranormal niche, and we do this thing called Strange Realities every year, which is, a conference and also / kind of a big party as well. So, it's been great to do over the last 5 years.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been an absolute blast. And for the folks at home wondering about this, one of the big reasons why I'm excited about this event and sharing it with the Binnall of America listeners is not just because, I love Adam and I love the folks at Conspirinormal, but we've had a lot of cool folks on the show over the past year, and a lot of them have had really awesome events, some of which I went to, like the Exeter UFO Festival and Whitehall Bigfoot Festival. But there were other ones, like the event put on by Paranormal 5 or Lauren's event up in Portland, or the one from the Infinite Rabbit Hole guys in, I believe it was Wisconsin, but now I can't remember off the top of my head, but it was, yeah, I think so. But up in that general area, you had to go to see them. What's exciting about Strange Realities and makes it really different from all of the conferences we've promoted here on Binnall of America over the year with the guests is that you folks listening right now, and I always kind of lament it when I have the guests on. I'm like, I want to go to this event. I'm sure there's other people listening who are like in Georgia or Seattle or Colorado who are like, I would love to go to this event, but it's, in 2 weeks and it's in Wisconsin or it's in Portland, Oregon, and Portland, Maine, and I can't make it. With the Strange Realities, long story short, is that you can watch all this online. So the people who are listening right now in Portland, Maine, or San Jose, California, or in Denver, Colorado, you're like, I would love to be able to see it. In this one rare occasion, I don't know, Adam's going to be like, shut up and all. I don't know why more of these events don't do this, because it's really, the paranormal has become like a global, especially with these podcasts, it's like a global audience of people, not just around America, but around the world. So I wish more of these events would be online. But Adams has been, the Strange Realities Conference has been at the cutting edge of this since the pandemic. You didn't have the online the first year, right? Because it was like, who would even think of that?
Yeah, the first year we didn't do it online, and we actually had some people requesting that it should be online, and we were kind of like, well, you should come to the conference.
Right.
You should be there. You should get the full experience. And then, yes, the pandemic hit, and because of finding like a technology like StreamYard, we did that conference just as an online-only conference in 2020.
Right. As everybody was doing that year.
And then in 2021, as everything kind of came back to life, we decided, well, we're going to do this as kind of like a hybrid thing, because in the meantime, because of the pandemic, SIR, which is the venue that we do it here in Nashville, they got set up for the bands to come in. That's their band rehearsal space. And so bands wanted to do their own thing online too during the pandemic. So they got set up to do it as well. So they were exactly what we needed to still do it as a live event at a location, at a venue, and then also stream. And so it's been like that now for the last 3, and now this 4th one, so that we've done live since 2021. So we definitely have it set up as the whole thing streams online. There may be some confusion. Some people may think that like the whole thing is streamed. They may think that the first 2 days aren't streamed, or like, because we have a 3rd day that is just online only, but the whole thing is online. So you can watch the entire conference, all 3 days, Friday night, Saturday, and Sunday. But last year we did a different thing where we didn't do it on site on Sunday, which made a whole hell of a lot more sense. And then on Sunday, and then on Sunday this year as well, is going to be just the online presentations.
Right. But essentially, long story short, this is a hybrid conference, as you said, and folks can, wherever you are, folks, you got 10 days. We wanted to make this episode come out so, you weren't like, well, I got plans this weekend, man. I got plans. Well, this isn't this weekend. It's next weekend. It's November 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, right after Halloween. So Friday the 1st, Saturday the 2nd, and Sunday the 3rd. And you can watch it all from the comfort of your own home. And I think that's, again, really awesome, and something I wish more conferences would do or make as an option. So, I promise this is not going to be like an extended plug edition of the show here, folks. I just wanted to, all right, yeah, there we go. So I'm having troubles with my Chrome tonight, but I'll just sort of run down the speakers real quick so Adam doesn't have to do it, and then we'll move into something else. So the MC for the proceedings of the weekend will be our dear friend Steve Berg, actor, podcaster, comedian. Then me, of course, Binnall, Nathan Isaac of the Penny Royal podcast, Steven Snyder, a.k.a. Recluse, from he's done all kinds of stuff. The Farm Podcast. Ren Collier, occult prediction practitioner. The one and only Joshua Cutchin. Brent Rains, author and editor. Micah Hanks. Everybody loves Micah Hanks. Been too long since he's been on Binnall of America. Kindle Lackey. Did I say
Kindle
that
Lackey,
right?
yeah.
Yep, Kindle Lackey. Yep. Okay. And Nevaeh Tare. I might have messed up.
Nevaeh Terry.
Nevaeh Terry. That was pretty close. And then the virtual folks online on Sunday. All those folks will be there in Nashville, so you can hang out with us. You're so lucky. You're so lucky to get to hang out with us, right? That's what a selling point that is. So you
it should be a selling point, guys, that hang out with all. That's like 50% of the hangout experience. Okay.
I feel like I caught myself being a complete asshole there, but yes, we're all going to be fucking hanging out. We want you to come and hang out with us too. Is essentially the point. There's a lot. Right. Now you just came in soft, so I don't know what's going on with your mic.
No big deal.
Right.
For some reason, StreamYard wants me to it keeps turning my mic down. So
I swear to Christ, they raised the price on StreamYard and it's all gone to hell ever since. I don't know if they have new owners or what, but anyway, okay. yeah.
I was going to say I did an interview on Skype last night. I didn't do it once, but StreamYard seems to be doing it. So, but anyway.
Yeah. It's very weird, man. It's very weird. All right. And then for the online part, the virtual stuff on Sunday, you got Soraya Askath of Where Did the Road Go? Timothy Renner from Strange Familiars, Katie Andrews, YouTuber and paranormal enthusiast, Robert Guffey, author and lecturer, our buddy Greg Bishop, author and podcast host. So that's packed with folks. And for Binnall of America fans, you heard me run down the lineup. That's I'd say that's probably like 60 to 70% of the people there have been on BOA or have been on BOA. The other 30% will be on BOA someday, I'm sure. But that's a pretty loaded lineup, and as I said, folks can watch it all on online, right, Adam?
They can watch it all online, and also should add on Sunday, Becky Ann Galentine will be joining us as well. So.
Oh, nice. Okay, that's a surprise because she wasn't on the thing, so that's awesome. So Becky Ann Galentine, who is also super cool and has been on BOA. So
I should say too that myself and Surfiel will both be speaking too on Friday and Saturday.
Yeah, no one's going to you guys.
Surfiel is actually going to do a workshop, but I'm going to be speaking.
Well, I will say that I think for the true sickos, one of the highlights of the weekend really is just to watch Adam go from sort of bright-eyed and bushy-tailed on Thursday when he's getting you at the airport to slowly turn into a puddle of goo by Saturday night. It's it really is. It's a show. It's the secret show. It's the back room. It's right out in the open. It's a secret. But all those of us are standing in the back of the room are like, oh Jesus, he's breaking down now. I don't know what he's doing. He's pacing. He's sweating. Something happened. He's waving his arms wildly. What is going on with Adam over there? Do we need to intervene? I think he's about to choke Dr. Future. So yeah, it's just to watch Adam break down over the course of the weekend is a blast. So
well, I'm glad that you get enjoyment out of it.
Yeah,
sometimes I melt down even before the conference even starts.
Oh man.
There was one year that was even before the thing started on that Friday, it was just disaster after disaster. So, but we worked.
Oh God, yeah, I remember that.
We've gotten to the point now where I feel like we do kind of have this thing down. I mean, I've had Ren has been helping out with the tech stuff a lot. This year I'm going to have my stepson helping out too. So it's I think it's I pray and I hope it's going to go smooth, but there's always some technical issue. Whenever you're doing something this complex, there's always a technical issue. So yeah, I'm getting excited talking about it now because I'm just sort of I remember all the little things. It's a lot of fun, folks. And this, I don't want, at the risk of being a downer, this could, I don't know how you're phrased. This could be the last one in Nashville. This might be
this might be the last of this incarnation of Strange Realities.
Yes, it's going to be the last one that we're going to do in this way. That's going to be like a live thing. We're going to we may be taking next year off, so I don't know if there's any expectation. I'm not even thinking about next year, but
right.
At this point, doing these things live, doing them where you got to rent the hall and all those type of things. There's costs that incur with that, and so it's a labor of love, but it's not exactly financially sound. So, but
right, it's tough. Yeah,
it's tough to do, and so we almost didn't do it this year. But we made the decision to go ahead and do it because last year we felt went well. So this will be the last hurrah of this incarnation of Strange Realities. So I'm telling people that if they are around the Nashville area, if they can get there are rates available to just come hang out on Friday or hang out on Saturday.
Yeah, and I think go ahead.
So if they don't want to come and pay for a hotel in Nashville, which I don't blame them, then
just come out for the day or whatever. Yeah,
come up for the day. And if you're somewhere in the Nashville area or surrounding areas, or even a couple hours away, come up, hang out with us. We'd love to have you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think another cool thing is that there's always like a lot of interesting people that come who are familiar with the people like listening right now, like Kyle Cadle from the whole scene down there in Somerset, Kentucky. He comes up, and a bunch of those folks come up. And last year, Lucinda Morrill came out with some of her friends, and it's like there's always some sort of like surprise people who aren't on the bill, who are from out of town, that are paranormal personalities that show up and hang out. So it's it's a lot of fun. Anyway, so all right. Now people are like, all right, for the fucking people who stuck around this long, who are like, how the fuck's long are they going to talk about this thing? So let's move into the world of paranormal. So have you, and conspiracy, because I want to talk to you about some of that stuff too. So have you, I guess this is a little more inside baseball, but it interests me. So you started the show in April of 2012. Have you seen like an evolution in not just like what you cover on the show, but also sort of how you feel about these topics and stuff, and sort of just an evolution in your thinking? You've been doing this for 13 years. I mean, I've felt the evolution in my thinking just from reviving the show a year ago, and believe me, it's far different. My thoughts on everything is completely different than from 2005 when I started. So, what about you? What's your evolution been like?
2012 was, when you look back on it, was such a simpler time, wasn't it? It really was. We thought the world was going to end and all that stuff back then, but it was such a simpler time. I would say that if you go back and listen to that show, I was still very much in this area of, a lot of this kind of like, it's hard to describe, but like kind of fringe Christian beliefs, like the stuff about the Nephilim and all that. I was still very much in that, although I probably was kind of coming out of that at that point when I started the show, and into things like 9/11 truth, which, I still, have some of that, but I think things didn't really shift until the pandemic, until 2020.
Yeah.
Because I think that's really when we really kind of, me and Sergio both really started kind of changing our minds about, conspiracy theory and the essentially the weaponization of it, and just how it was really being used to promote like either political things or even commercial things.
Yeah.
It seemed that people kind of really lost their mind with the conspiracy stuff during the pandemic. Like all this stuff that we had talked about for a very, very long time, and that Sergio and I have known about since probably the 90s, is that it was stuff that all of a sudden, like, you know, your grandma was talking about, whereas before
on Facebook,
on Facebook, right? And they, as well as before, they had just kind of been, they had really not paid any attention to it, or they'd even like made fun of it themselves. And then all of a sudden, you know, conspiracy theory is in vogue and popular. I mean, just like, you know, the pandemic was like, I don't know if you could really say it was the start of it, but I think it was the point where like ourselves and some other shows kind of diverged, you know, like they fully embraced the whole, you know, anti-vax movement and all that type of thing. Yeah. They didn't, as to, I think, really give themselves more clout, and anything that was like kind of anti-establishment or whatever, what they saw as anti-establishment, you know, is when I think it's really started to get really, really crazy. Yeah. But even before that, you know, Trump had already kind of used weaponized conspiracy theory even to get elected in 2016. Yeah. So we started to see those things, and then the pandemic, I think, was like the tipping point of just like, you know, look, like we can't, like this is a serious situation. I always like your analogy of the alien invasion, but this is a serious situation, and like, you know, we kind of need to come together on this, but we got all these things pulling us apart, and so like, you know, I mean, there. You know, things about the pharmaceutical companies and that stuff. Like, I mean, it's all kind of valid points, but like there was no way. Yeah, there was no way we were going to come out of that without. We had to get back to business basically, and there was no way we were going to come out of that with like some kind of rushed vaccine. It just wasn't gonna happen. But it seems like it's gotten even worse now in 2024, where. You know, you've got weird stuff like Tataria and Star People and all this stuff, all this weirdness on TikTok that, you know, Sergio sends me. People just believe just anything. And
oh God, yeah.
But the moniker conspiracy theory has even gotten misused too. Like people will say like, well, but like I believe I've got a conspiracy theory for you. Bigfoot, that's a conspiracy theory. Well, what's the conspiracy theory about Bigfoot? No, just Bigfoot. Bigfoot's the conspiracy theory. So the word conspiracy theory could mean something that's like cryptozoological or UFOs or ghosts, or like, that's my conspiracy theory. That's not what conspiracy theory means, people. Like, it's not what the word is supposed to mean.
Yeah, who are you hanging out with? Yeah.
So you see this a lot with younger people. Maybe people are like 20, 25 years younger.
Gotcha. Yeah. Well, now I sound like one of them, but here's my conspiracy theory. But people, I didn't even think of this till you were talking. And it's like, look, if you want a real fucking conspiracy theory, it's not like that they're poisoning us with the vaccines or they're going to mind control or whatever. The fucking conspiracy theory is right in front of your eyes, folks. Now I sound like a real dude. The thing is that they showed you that they could come up with a fucking vaccine in like a year when they had to do it. So it's like, well, maybe y'all aren't fucking really trying with some of these other cures for diseases. Like, you know, maybe finding a cure for cancer is like a fucking multi-billion-dollar industry, and if they figured out how to cure it in a year, everybody would be out of a fucking job. So they don't. And the vaccine, the COVID vaccine, kind of pulled the curtain back where it's like, oh, actually, they probably could solve all this shit, but the financial infrastructure would collapse. So they're like, oh, we're getting there with cancer. We're getting there. There's a conspiracy theory for you, folks.
Yeah, I mean it's a good point. It's a good valid point, I think. For sure.
It's a little shady. But yeah, you're absolutely. It's interesting looking at it from the perspective of your show, because, you know, I was sort of doing the math as you were talking, and it's like we started in 2012. And you went right through like the Mayan calendar. So it was kind of a weird year. That was when the Sandy Hook happened too. I remember it happened a week before the end of the Mayan calendar, and I'm like, oh, Jesus, I hope this isn't some kind of, or was it like? Also, I thought to myself, was this some kind? Like the Stanford egg experiment or whatever? Was it like, were we all so focused on fucking the end of the Mayan calendar, like, because this was like a Y2K. This was like a widespread cultural thing for people who weren't around back then. This was like, this wasn't just podcasts and fringe radio. By the time we got up to the end of the Mayan calendar, everybody's fucking talking about it. Even they made a movie about it, 2012.
Right.
So it was like a real big deal. So part of me wondered if it was like the disturbance, the deeply, deeply disturbing incident, Sandy Hook, the shooting, if somehow that was like resonated into the fucking ether, and we were all, and people were like, and we just got the fucking date wrong. It was like we can't pin it down that close, but it was like something's gonna happen. Something's going to happen in December 2012, and it's like, well, this earth-shattering really event, this like indelible on your consciousness, sort of like Sandy Hook's one you don't forget. That's fucking awful. It happened right around the Mayan calendar. So I don't know. Just there you go. You're inspiring odd conspiracy theories tonight, Adam.
Well, I mean, I've heard I think it's what Eric Wargo talks about that stuff where there's an event that happens and it's like when you drop like a rock into like a pool of water or whatever, and you see like the radiated out, waves, little waves. Right. And it's like some are going to the right, some are going to the left. And so the idea is that, if you look at an event as that rock, just as a demonstration, then you've got waves into the future, but you might actually have waves into the past.
Right.
And that, people might pick up on those waves in the past and something weird is about to happen, because you hear weird stuff like that with 9/11 too, like people knowing or feeling that something was going to happen, so they didn't go to work that day or whatever. You hear about that kind of stuff.
So, circle back to my point. So you got 2012, you get through that. Then, interestingly, it's like 4 years later, 2016, the whole tumultuous election. Then up to another 4 years later, you're at 2020, which is the pandemic. And now you're here up to 2024, which is, I guess, another tumultuous election. So it's an interesting sort of, what is that, 12, 13-year run you've been on of world-changing events. It seems like, it was a much more innocent time back in 2012, now that I look back on it.
Yeah, we've definitely, I feel like in the time that we've been around, we've definitely covered the gamut of a lot of different subjects. I was talking to somebody the other day about how, we kind of have gotten on these different kicks, and we've been on, for a while, we were just talking about UFOs a lot all the time. And then we kind of got sick of that subject. And then, there was we were talking about folk magic, are paying attention to ghosts more, or just we're kind of a grab bag type of show. We don't really stay with one topic necessarily. And, I think we're a little more, I guess you could say, political than other shows. We're not afraid to kind of speak our mind about how we feel about this kind of madness that's going on around us.
Yeah.
And so I think that probably A, gets us in trouble, and B, people probably don't listen as much just because we talk about those things, and people don't want to be reminded. They want to just hear spooky stories about Bigfoot. No?
That's for sure. I mean, if I were willing to bet, I don't keep track. I certainly, you'd think I wish I had kept track of the numbers, the traffic numbers for Binnall America from the very beginning. But I can guarantee you that we started the show in 2005, up until 2016. We there was no reason for people not to listen. Let's say just didn't like my style or the technological backwardness of the show, whatever. But I think once it came down to once the tribalism really became serious in this country, it's like I'm sure that a significant percentage of Binnall of America listeners who were there from the beginning just fucking peeled off. And they're like, I'm MAGA, baby. Fuck you, Binnall. I'm not listening to Binnall anymore. I'm MAGA. So he's not, and not, and I'm not, folks. So if you are, get your fucking head examined. I don't know what to tell you.
It's funny how many people in this field are very right wing.
Yeah.
The
personalities.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of crazy, and it's one of those things that I've definitely noticed. I think, man, like probably like 2015, 2016. I mean, we were probably playing along with some of that stuff. I'm ashamed to say, but like, I think that I got my head on straight after the 2016 election. And, but I mean, I think that might be one of the ways that I think that we've changed, because I think that like in that little time period, we were kind of more, let's be in the middle. Let's be, let's listen to everybody's voices. Let's have these people on. Let's hear them out. And I think that kind of gradually changes over the course of, the 4 years from 2016 to 2020. But after that, we got really just like, no, I mean, I think there's people that it's like we don't need to interview those people. We can let other shows do that. And, people want you also to like, the obverse of that though is that people want you to like challenge people on the show too, and like you invite somebody on and you have to challenge them, and so that's kind of crazy too. But if it's somebody that I just don't personally agree with, I'm not going to have that person on. I mean,
yeah, exactly.
I had this one guy hit me up about coming on, and he wanted to talk about demonic possession. And I'm like, great, I love demonic possession. Let's talk about demonic possession, And I'm reading this guy's book, and this is the only person that I've ever contacted and said, nah, this ain't gonna work.
Yeah.
Like I'm reading this guy's book, because I just jumped at the chance of having a guest. And and so like he's talking about in the book about how gay people are demonically influenced. And I'm just like, no, dude. It's like, even if we don't talk about that, somebody out there is going to like dig that up and say, why did you have this guy on your show?
Right.
And then we might have some weird problem or something. And so I was just like, but at the same time, I'm like, I can't in good faith have this dude on the show,
right?
It's basically you're just spouting just a bunch of hate, essentially,
right? Exactly. So,
I mean, but that's probably the only person that we've ever had on. I listen to a lot of podcasts, and so if I hear someone on some other show that's just like, I'm like, nah, I won't have that person on. So I think that's really helped too, and it might stick us in a little bit of a ghetto or in a rut, but so be it.
Yeah, well, yeah, I've heard the argument that from people. One person really was like trying pitching something I wasn't interested in. It was like people, even if you don't agree with, you should let them have their say, and it's like, or something like that. It was some kind of like free speech argument. It's like, do they have free speech? They have the platform to say whatever they want.
Yeah, right. They don't have
the right to come on my show because I have the right to pick and choose who comes on the show. So it's a no.
Yeah, absolutely. You don't have to like. If they're going on other people's shows, then I think that they have.
Right.
Yeah, I think people get worked up and they're just like, well, I'd love to hear how you would interview those people or whatever. But
yeah, exactly.
It's
like, well, I don't want to be uncomfortable, dude. So pass. What's interesting to me, speaking of kind of all this craziness in general, this week has been with this huge hurricane about to hit Florida. and the hurricane that devastated North Carolina. And for obviously the listeners who are out there who are Binnall America buffs, if you're out there and you're in these areas, take care of yourself. I hope you're okay. You know, I've got you all in mind. It's really fucking crazy, but not really, because these storms are becoming more and more frequent. But that to that end, we're fucking spearheaded by like the craziest of the crazies, including Marjorie Taylor Greene. Like somehow it stuns me that like these old dumb conspiracy theories like keep bubbling up. I just, it's a sign of being old, I guess, where it's like, oh, Jesus, really? This is now a thing? Like we were talking about this years ago. Weather control. They're all talking about weather control. They insist that it got all the way up to the fucking president, to Biden, when they were like, he's like reacting the same way I am, essentially, folks. Like, he's just like, what the fuck is this malarkey about weather control? Can we get serious? This is crazy. But it's really wild that weather control is now, steaming up the zeitgeist during these hurricanes.
Yeah, no pun intended, steaming. Yeah, it's, again, that's one of those conspiracy theories that has been around forever.
Right.
Weather modification. I mean, that's something I heard about in the 90s, right? I mean, they were talking about it then. HAARP. Yeah, you heard about HAARP and on Alex Jones, and this stuff was this kind of stuff has always been around, and because it's always been around, it's become a meme, and you can just basically take it out of your toolbox and use it as a political and a propaganda weapon.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've noticed that more and more, and I just heard about this Marjorie Taylor Greene thing today about the weather modification. I guess that maybe, I don't know if it's actually coming from her. I think she's just pretty much
one of the biggest champions of it. So.
Yeah, she's aping stuff that's already on Facebook and on X.
Yeah,
formerly known as Twitter. But it's I kept seeing this weather modification, weather modification starting to trend again on X a lot.
Yeah.
And then people talking about it on Facebook, and it's like they're modifying the weather, they're creating the hurricanes.
Yeah.
And all this type of stuff is the old cloud seeding thing, which some weather modification stuff exists, right? But it's usually just let's make a rain cloud, a little bit of rain. Like a hurricane is a whole other thing. But I guess we'll be seeing YouTube shorts on pretty soon of look at this mysterious plane that is on top of the hurricane. What is it doing? What is this? We're gonna see that shit coming up pretty soon on TikTok.
Yeah, they're gonna break down the track of the storm when it's over and be see, right here at 7:45 a.m. it takes a turn that's scientifically impossible. It scientifically can't be. It's all right, well, how do I, based on what, you random fucking dude on TikTok? How do I know that? Where, cite your sources, man. It's crazy.
What's the implication of that? I think the implication is coming from Republican Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene. The implication is that it's the Democrats doing it.
Yeah, they outright say. Yeah, they don't even imply it. They say, they're trying to impact the voting areas and shit. And it's just have we gone that far that you believe that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are fucking steering a hurricane into areas where people won't here's the fucked up part. We're probably, we are going to people are going to be oh, this is political now. But who gives a fuck? We're 2-3 weeks out from the election. So, but what gets me is that they say these things, it's projection. Because if they had the fucking ability to do that, they would do it. So they assume that it's being done to them. Do you understand what I'm saying? That's what worries me about. That's what worries me about this election. These people have been so brainwashed into thinking that it was stolen that they're gonna be well, fuck you. All rules are out the window. We're going to steal now too, and they're going to fucking actually steal. So we'll see what happens. But that's there's this fucked up projection system, and they projected the worst quality. Like it's like, dude, believe me, if I thought that they were fucking steering hurricanes into people, I wouldn't be on the side of the of the madness.
Well, the right likes to do that a lot. I'm sure the left does it too. But I mean, the right, you see this weird projection with them, and this is not just about the hurricane stuff. I mean, one of the things I noticed early on, and this was about 2015, 2016, was that there was a lot of talk about rules for radicals. Are you familiar with
Saul Alinsky?
Yeah, Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals. And they would talk about that a lot, like how the left is using rules for radicals to infiltrate and influence.
Yeah.
But from reading it, it sounds a lot like they're using these ideas that they picked up from Rules for Radicals.
Yeah.
So you heard this meme about Rules for Radicals, but like it's a projection of like we're actually using the same. We're the ones actually using those same tactics.
Right.
And you've seen it again and again. I mean, like all this talk about how Biden's a dictator or whatever.
Yeah.
Is pretty much like, them telling you what they're going to do. It's very strange.
Yeah. It's strange. It's maddening. Like the hypocrisy of it is just, it's just maddening. Now, we'll pivot away a bit here from politics because, now we just keep trying to drive the audience down to a smaller and smaller group of.
Well, I do want to say that, like, when we were kind of discussing, and you were a part of this discussion, when should we do this thing? Because like we had been doing the conference in October, and a lot of that was because there's so much going on in Nashville in October. So we wanted to be able to kind of pull away from that and do it the first weekend of November. But Halloween being so close there, it was because we do the conference the day after Halloween. And before it was 2 days after that. But the only other option maybe was to do like the weekend after the election. And so we were concerned like that might not be a good weekend because we don't know what's going to happen after the election. That's how crazy things are getting.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. For people who are listening to this like 5 or 10 years from now, this is where we were at in mid-October 2024.
This has been so. I mean, it's been so long at this time. I mean, has it not? Like, I mean, if you feel like, I mean, this has literally been going on for over 2 years. This election. That's how it feels. Ever since the congressional elections of 2022, like it feels like it's been going on for 2 years.
Well, yeah.
Like it's been this saga.
Trump announced he was running again right after that election. So he's been running for 2 fucking years straight. And he was really been running since he lost the last fucking election. It's just been this long, drawn out. This is why, I'm just so desperate for this to be over. And I don't really want to deal with 4 more years of this because this all began in 2015. Like, if he wins, if he stays through, God knows, like we're already on a decade of this, folks. Like, enough. I know. Let's move on. Let's move on as a country and as a society and fucking, I just don't want to deal with all this shit anymore. It's been 10 years. Enough. Jesus. So let's all put your hands together.
Well, I just feel like
folks, if you're out there, fucking vote.
I feel like everything's going to get worse. So, but
everything is going to get worse. I'm afraid. But everything is going to get worse. So, meanwhile, people are entertaining themselves with UFOs because it's like it's really remarkable that as the world is burning in this chaotic fucking situation, that UFOs has entered into zeitgeist in a much bigger way. Now, I guess, what do you think of all that? Because as someone who has been in this now for 13 years plus, just as the podcaster, it's like, we talk about this with Greg Bishop on the Year in Review show. Like, if you go back to 2012 when you guys started the show, like, UFOs were fucking dead. They were like super lame, and there was nothing happening with UFOs. It was just dead as dead could be, and it was like ufology was going through this existential crisis of like, what is it going to become? What is it going to be? And then everything changed in 2017.
Yeah, I think the same year that we started, I think it was 2012, or it might have even been 2013, was the biggest thing when we started was like the Roswell slides thing. Do you remember the Roswell slide?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, that was like the biggest thing, and of course that ended up being just a bunch of baloney. It was pictures from some dude's vacation. But so that was it. And then 2017 hit, and then all of a sudden everybody started like talking about it again. Yeah. And I feel like now that's kind of died down. Like last year we had Dave Grush, he showed up and was talking, but what happened to him? Like, as far as I know, I haven't heard anything about him, recently.
Right.
But at least
he certainly hasn't like come through. Yeah. Followed through on whatever he, was supposed to be the bridge to.
Right. And I guess Elizondo, has a book out now, okay, great. I mean, people were so, like, it was a real rift in 2017 because you had a lot of you called them the UFO Twitter bros that were out there. And they were like, well, government, we got to trust the government on this. These are the same people that never trusted the government before. We got to trust the government. We got to trust the government on this. And, because they're the ones that hold the cards, which was an exact reversal of everything that, had been talked about since the 1940s. But anyway,
well, even if you transpose it's so paradoxical, the thinking too, in a way, because I'm sure there are people out there who are like, oh yeah, they're absolutely running these hurricanes. They're absolutely steering these hurricanes into North Carolina, Florida. Absolutely. The government's definitely doing this. And then in the other breath, they're like, we need the fucking government to just tell us the truth about UFOs. Enough's enough. And it's like, they're willing to like fucking destroy parts of America with natural disasters and kill tons of people. But when it comes to aliens, they're cool. Like that's
I think the hope there is that the aliens will come and save us all. And that's the reason why we need that. And they'll give us like, free energy sources, and they won't try to eat us or something like that. Like that's
right.
Yeah. I think that's where that comes from. But
on a psychological level, yes, absolutely.
I think the furor has kind of just like died down because like I said, like Grush was part of that whole congressional hearing about UFOs last year. Yeah. But then this year it seemed, and so you had like a resurgence, I think, of all that stuff last year. Yeah. That was kind of tail end on 2017. But I feel like now it's kind of gone by the wayside a little bit again. So I don't know. And of course, like, it's UAP now, right? It's not. Yeah, right. It's not UFOs. That's the new way of looking at it, which might not be a bad way of looking at it. And really, the way that it's being handled is that it is inconclusive. Yeah, and they're not saying that it's aliens anymore, or supposedly not saying it's aliens anymore, but just like. So I think that that's a good thing, but really, the whole UFO, the way it's been since 2017, it's really just kind of bored me. I've not been really that interested in it. I just don't find it fascinating. And I've always found more of the historical UFO stuff fascinating because, like, in 2015, 2016, 2017, before the New York Times report, because that came out at the end of that year.
Right.
It was like, we talked a lot about the historical stuff, which I find way more interesting, than, and like alien abduction, alien contact, and all that stuff. I find more interesting than like lights in the sky. So it's way more fascinating.
Well, I think that's kind of what the 2017 revolution or whatever, you need to come up with some kind of, the UAP revolution caused, in a sense, where it's like the old school UFO people found themselves just kind of, most of us were like blasé about all this. And that caused, I think, a resurgence of interest in the classic stuff, the history, the weird cases, the fringe stuff that maybe all got kind of a second look, because what ufology used to be was like eccentric, wacky, very smart, some of them very not smart, others individuals who were like all like the old lone gunman thing, like the who were kind of like on their own, doing their own research. It was like a patchwork of eccentrics and dreamers and enthusiasts and just characters. And not that the current crop of people aren't characters, because believe me, they certainly are. But now it's sort of turned into government folks and so-called insiders and people who claim to have information. It's not really people who are like, I'm studying the impressions left behind, trace cases, or I'm looking at cattle mutilations, or you still have like sort of specialists in that stuff, but it's just not quite the same. Or it's like, I am looking at this 1958 case that is very interesting that happened in Tempe. It's now people don't even really have like an appreciation for that kind of stuff. The people in the UAP era, they just want to know what's going on, what's happening now. They just want the government to tell us tell us that there's aliens. They want the government to tell us that there's aliens. That's the whole thing about it. And the insider, fiefdom or clique or whatever you want to call them, those self-styled insiders, they're always just teasing out this information and shit. You never really, it's always the same. I heard from a guy, from another guy kind of thing, where those of us who've been around forever have seen a million times.
Yeah. Serious, like serious researchers. I'm not really seeing, you still see some of that, but like that old school is kind of gone.
Right. There's a sort of odd academic resurgence that's also going off on the side, but I don't really have much interest in that either, because that to me is like, I don't know, it just doesn't quite capture the spirit of high strangeness that I like. I have all the respect in the world for an anthropologist from, I don't know, Tucson State. But it's like, I don't really care about your academic paper on, on this. To me, these things don't really, when you try to like pin it down into that thing, it's as bad as when I have to read these government releases from the Pentagon where they talk about their UAP program. It's both like, both realms are fucking like, are just making this shit boring as hell.
Which I'm sure that as doing what you do, like I'm sure being pulling all these stories in the news every day, like I'm sure that you probably see some of this stuff so you probably have a different perspective on trying to wade through a lot of this stuff than maybe I do, because a lot of it I just don't really.
It just goes by. Yeah.
Pay attention, yeah, and that's the thing too. Like it goes by so quick too.
Right.
Like again with the Dave Grush thing. I mean, like you just like, oh, this is amazing. You know, like this guy's an insider, even though he said, you know, I talked to a guy who told me that.
Yeah.
You know, and that possibility that he might be associated with military intelligence, which there's another whole other aspect of it. But like, where did he go? You know, if it was so amazing. And that's the thing, is like, that seemed like from 2017 till now, that seems like it's been like, we've got this amazing revelation and like disclosure is coming, and like it never happens, you know, and then they'll say that, that's disclosure, you know, but
yeah. This has all been disclosure. It's like, okay, but
yeah, you know. It's just a key. I mean, it was something, you know, somebody like what Stephen Bassett or somebody, you know, really fought for in like the early 2000s, but now it's like just a key word, really.
Right, exactly. Well, the thing is, it's like this movement, this trend, the UAP thing, undoubtedly, to the people who are like, it is disclosure, it's like undoubtedly this has raised the belief in aliens much higher than it had been before. But what disclosure is the fucking knowledge of aliens. Like, there's a difference there. I don't think people understand that. It's to believe in aliens is one thing. That's great. But disclosure is that we fucking know the aliens are here. You don't need to believe anymore. Seeing is believing. But right now, where the human race and population of the public is still at the fucking belief stage.
Yeah.
Now, is there a topic on Conspirinormal? I'm sorry, I didn't think you were going to say anything. Did you?
Oh no, go ahead. It's fine.
Is there any topic that has surprised you on Conspirinormal? Like, because I do this with Binnall of America often. I'll sort of invite guests on. I'll take a flyer on it. I'll be like, let's see what this person has to say, and sometimes they really surprise me and really. I'm like, wow, that was really something else, like the meat-eating horses episode, or the late great Kendall Carver from International Cruise Victims. It was like these guests were like, wow, that was one that stayed with me here. You know, here I am like 10, 15 years after I did those interviews. I still remember them. And I'll be quite honest, folks, it's been so long. There have been other guests, other shows that I did back in 2007 or something like that, where it's like, I'm like, oh, you kind of have to remind me about the episode. Oh, I remember when we had that guy on. Yeah, okay, that was all right. And then that jogs the memory. But there are others that stay with you for a long time. So that's the question for you, because you've been doing this now for 13 years. Are there episodes that have stayed with you to this day that you still kind of like, even if you did the interview like 5 or 6 years ago or covered the topic, it'll cross your mind like once or twice a week where you're like, oh yeah, that, you know, that I still think about that one.
That's a really good question. You know, I had a similar question kind of posed to me last night. I think a lot of it I will answer this way is that it's like, I think that there's favorite guests that I have, or maybe it's not necessarily surprising but like, you know, Walter Bosley would probably be one of the ones that really sticks with me a lot, and I really enjoy having him on. But like that, probably like that first episode that I did with him about Empire of the Will, where we kind of like got in the weeds and got a little deep with it, was probably one of the best episodes I think that we've ever done. And if I ever do like I don't think it's on, ever put it on YouTube because it's so early. It was like 2014, I think, is when we had him on. And that was one. And there was one a couple of years ago that we did with this guy named Gary Revel. And he used to live here in Nashville. And he actually investigated Martin Luther King Jr. assassination because he was working for a lawyer that was trying to get James Earl Ray off the hook. And which, you know, kind of controversial anyway. But of course, like the King, like the family of Martin Luther King never really believed that James Earl Ray had anything to do with it, or if he did, he didn't actually shoot him. But you know, he had some like really kind of like firsthand personal experiences that were really interesting to talk about at being like an investigator on that.
Yeah.
And this of course was like 10 years after the fact, you know, and I think just like anybody that like shares a real wealth of experience, like somebody like Peter Robbins, who's like, you know, done so many cool things and been involved with like not just UFOs, but like early punk rock and like the New York art scene, you know, somebody like that like, you know, you kind of preserve their voices and their experience. And then guys like Tim Beckley, Brent Raines would be another person too that, you know, just so much experience and some of the things that we talked about. Steve Stockton, all the great stories that he has and some of the kind of chilling, spooky stories that he talks about.
Yeah.
So those are a lot of the ones that I really enjoy. Jack Montgomery was a good one, talking about his book American Shamans, about his experiences learning basically how to do folk magic from a powwow doctor in in South Carolina in the 70s. You know, all those different guys like that. Sandra London was another one from a couple of years ago that, you know, just a wealth of information, and her experiences hanging out with like Carrie Thornley.
Yeah.
You know, and anything with Go Rightly too. I mean,
oh well, yeah.
Go Rightly's great, and like also though too, like sometimes I like to get off the beaten path a little bit on these shows, and because like one of the because I listen to paranormal podcasts, of course, but I also listen to history podcasts because history is like my big thing, one of my big things, and of course the one thing I like try to incorporate is, you know, the history of the paranormal and looking back on things like historically. But, you know, so, you know, there's a guy we had on that did a show called History in the Bible, you know, like the history that's in the Bible, but also like of the writing of the Bible. And, you know, kind of taking it not from a really religious viewpoint, but more kind of a secular archaeological viewpoint.
Yeah. And
I had that guy on. He's actually in Australia, and that was one of my favorite episodes, because like some of this stuff, like you know, I think some of this you got to like switch it up a little bit, because like we can't talk about Bigfoot and ghosts and
right
sea monsters all the time. I mean, you get bored, and Bigfoot, you know, but also like because of that, you know, John Brooks, because of that episode, John Brooks got in touch with me. We talked about like the Jesus myth, like whether or not Jesus was an actual historical person or not. And like, he doesn't think so. And then here's why. And like, so exploring stuff like that is like really fun. And, yeah, I mean, you know, talk about like the history of Russia, a guy named Mark Schaus, that, you know, that's important to talk about today, you know, like,
it doesn't have to be paranormal. Yeah, exactly.
Right. Yeah. So incorporating all that in is really awesome. And like, it's like, it's hard to answer like to a specific show, because I think around episode 100, I could have like pulled it right out and be like, oh yeah, that was but it's been so long and I've done so many. Yeah, and so it's crazy. That you've done more than me probably, and it's like you've definitely been doing it longer than I have. But like, it's kind of crazy. It's almost like I take these things in total, you know.
Right.
Dr. Future would be another one. I've had him on so many times, and his research on the Georgia Guidestones. You know, he gets no credit. He gets no credit for being the guy that solved the mystery of who R.C. Christian was.
Yeah, it's really crazy.
No credit, but he did it.
CNN did an article like, and I
Future was. It was on last week tonight. They talked about it too. Yeah, the dark clouds over Elberton, and then CNN, and then actually that article of CNN. That actually, he talked to Mike, the guy who wrote that. So some of, you know, he actually got a lot of that information from Mike, but you know, being able to like talk about that on the show with the guy who figured it all out, who's my friend, was pretty damn cool. But
yeah, absolutely.
people still think the Illuminati built it. So
yeah, it's funny. That's a funny deal because that's a mystery that I think is solved. That Mike did solve the mystery of who built the Georgia Guidestones, and it's like it's so funny that it never. I mean, maybe sometime in the future it'll take, but it's like it hasn't taken. It's really crazy that, like, you'll read articles and people will write, and they're like, no one knows who built the Georgia Guidestones. It's like, no, they do. They figured it out. The Dark Skies Over Elberton movie, Dr. Future. You got to check this out. They figured it out. You guy who wrote this article, this blog post or whatever. So it's very it's funny and annoying that that explanation hasn't taken hold to this, because it should be just that's the story, folks, But I think with the Guidestones being blown up, it adds like this other air of mystery to the whole thing, where it was always kind of like a fringe, anomalous American mystery kind of thing, and now it's gone. So it'll just be sort of like this weird relic of the past conspiracy that, so I don't know. Maybe eventually it'll kind of all be encompassed into one thing. Someone needs to write George, like if Dr. Future hasn't, I don't know who else could, but like someone needs to write like the definitive history of the Georgia Guidestones now that they're gone and everything. Really lay this out in like a book. Maybe then that would take hold somewhere. But yeah, he did amazing work.
Yeah, he really did. He may not do it, but somebody, somebody should, and they should definitely, that work that he did should be recognized. But yeah, just stuff like that is cool. Being able to talk about that is really cool. I mean, and that's the thing is like the whole reason I started the show was because I'd listened to so many other shows at the time, like Darkness Radio, World of the Unexplained, Ghostly Talk, these shows, and like I had heard all these people, and I started going to like these ghost hunting conferences, these paranormal conferences, and I would go to those a lot. And like,
really,
the first one I ever went to, I think it was 2006. It was like the Mid-South Paranormal Convention.
Oh wow,
Louisville, Kentucky, and and I met a lot of these people. And so like my whole goal when I started the show in 2012 was like, I want to talk to these people. I want to do my own interview with them, Yeah. And like try to like combine the worlds of like all these people I knew in like this conspiracy world, and then like the people I knew in like the paranormal research world, and try to combine the two a little bit. And,
that's how we got Conspirinormal.
That's how we got Conspirinormal, man. It's just a word that came to me one day. So I was like, conspiracy and paranormal. There we go. Portmanteau.
Yes, Portmanteau. Yeah, it takes a bit to figure out the spelling, but once you get it down, it's the IR.
Yeah. People put the A in the middle too, and like, it's always kind of maybe one of those things that hurt us. I don't know.
Hey man, look, my show's called Binnall of America. Like no one fucking even. What are you listening to? Binnall of America. What the fuck is that? Oh, it's like a paranormal show. It's a paranormal show.
Right.
Oh, it's not spooky happenings or fucking, but hey, it's Binnall America. It's my show. It's what I fucking am interested in talking about. It's not, that the paranormal doesn't drive the train. I do.
I tell you, I've really enjoyed the revival.
Oh, thanks,
and yours was a show that I had not listened to until I really met you. Really, I think I'd listened to it maybe a couple of times, and I heard you on other shows. But since you've been back doing the revival, I've been listening to it every week, and I've been really enjoying it.
Well, now you're going to have to skip this week's episode because you're on it. So. I wouldn't want.
I might still listen just to see how bad I did. So. Oh
no, you're doing great too. You're doing great.
Thanks.
Do you? So you would go to these ghost conferences. This is interesting. So were you ghost hunting? Were you into like that whole thing? Or were you just kind of like curious about paranormal?
I really wasn't into ghost hunting. I really wasn't. Okay. So I mean, I think for me, recently in the last few years, like a lot of people's entry point to a lot of this has been Hellier, right?
Yeah.
In like 2019, starting like 2018, 2019. And then the second season. And like for me and for a lot of other people, like I was always into the paranormal. I was always into it, right? But I'd lost some interest in it. And because I was way more interested in history and some of the more conspiracy stuff, UFOs, that kind of thing. Well, UFOs is paranormal, but you know what I mean.
Yes, crosses over a lot.
But so like Ghost Hunters, like the first couple of seasons of Ghost Hunters, the TV show, was like really big deal for me. Like I ate that shit up.
Wow, I didn't know this about you, and I've known you for a long time. This is great.
I was about it came out in 2004 was the first episode, and I was like immediately hooked because like the good thing about that show, I thought, and that kind of changed later on, was that they didn't always get something. They didn't always get any evidence. Sometimes it was explained by, like, there was one episode where like it was explained by the fact that these people had like a whole bunch of like chemicals, just sitting out, and they were breathing in the chemicals, and they were basically like paint thinner and shit, and they were like, essentially the house had become toxic, and they were like seeing things. But the reason they were seeing things is because they were hallucinating, because they were breathing paint thinner every day.
Jesus Christ.
And like, so like stuff like that. So they wouldn't, so it was a real scientific approach. And I was like, that's pretty cool, man. I got into the EVP thing really hard. And listening to EVPs was like a big thing. And because of that, that interest, I remember I was listening to Coast to Coast, and because I worked late at night, I would have the radio on. And this is like 2004, maybe 2005.
Yeah. I
was listening to Coast to Coast, and they had these, Nori had on these two guys from Detroit, named Doug, Scott L. and Doug, and they were from the Ghostly Talk show.
Yeah,
and they were one of the first, you could say, podcast, but it wasn't a podcast, right? Because it was like they were just you went to their website and listened to this shit, or they streamed it live. They were doing all this stuff way before anybody else was really doing it.
Yeah,
and so I started listening to them, and like I would call into the show and shit. And then I found through them this other show called World of the Unexplained. These guys in North Carolina, Jay Scott and Trent, and they became like probably my favorite show. And I would like listen, like 2006 or so, I would listen to their episodes like while I was going to sleep and shit. And they had great stuff like Lorraine Warren and like the Highgate Vampire guys, just like great stuff. And they were like a huge influence on me when I started Conspirinormal. And but because of that, because I wanted to meet the Ghostly Talk guys, I went to the Mid-South Paranormal Convention in 2006, like I mentioned, and that was put on by the Louisville Ghost Hunters. But I really wasn't into ghost hunting. I just like the paranormal stuff. I like the story, and that's how I met like somebody like Troy Taylor. Like I saw him speak a few times. He's still doing conferences out there in Illinois.
Yeah,
which I think Tobias Whalen was just there not too long ago. But like, so because I started going to these things, and I would meet these people, and just really wanted to get them on the show. And like, I think I stopped. I think the last one of those I really went to was like 2013, I think.
Okay, yeah.
And And that's really what inspired me to do my own conference eventually, which is the Strange Realities Conference.
Yeah.
I'd always wanted to do it. Guy Malone was also a big influence on me there too, because in 2017, Rob used to be on Conspirinormal. We drove out to New Mexico because for the 70th anniversary of Roswell, of whatever happened in Roswell, he was out there and doing a conference that was like non-ETH, extraterrestrial hypothesis. So he had like Greg Bishop, Nick Redfern, Jack Brewer, Michael Heiser, and I think a few others. A couple might have been Joe Jordan. A couple, of course, because they're associated. A few, and I think a few other people. But that was like a big comp. And I was like, man, I could do this too. Like, that kind of started the ball rolling in my mind of wanting to do my own thing. So, and SIR was where Rob worked, so it was just a perfect place, and that's where we've done it. But it started out for me just by like going to these conferences and being an attendee, and just being this weird guy that would call these internet radio shows just because I heard it on Coast to Coast one night.
Adam in Tennessee, you're on the air. Yeah,
that's right. That's right.
Yeah. See, that's wild. See, I didn't really know this much about your origin story, so that's really, that's really crazy. So you're kind of like the guy in the audience I talk to when I start every presentation. When I'm like, look, you could be a part of this. You could be on the stage. You could. There's no, there really aren't any gatekeepers in all this. You could just put out your own thing on a blog or a podcast or whatever. Or get on social media now with TikTok and Instagram and everything. Though I just sound like an old man or whatever, it's hard to keep up with. You mentioned TikTok. It's like hard to keep up with that whole scene. I saw the other day talk about like how this news goes by. I'm swimming in the paranormal news river all day, and it's like they were just like new movie from social media. Teen paranormal heartthrobs, Cody and something. And it was like two 20-year-old kids or something who apparently have huge followings on TikTok and Instagram and all those things. And they like ghost hunt. And they're I don't know. They're they're apparently like huge sensation that I have no idea about. It's really bizarre. And so like they have a movie that's, what is it? Where I think they go on they just ghost hunt and shit.
Right.
Right. Yeah. So I don't know what the hell it's called, but yeah. Let me see if I can find another thing. Yeah, no, I don't know what the hell it is, but it's like two young kids. It's just so bizarre. It's like, I don't understand any of this. I didn't realize this was even a thing.
The TV stuff got so saturated after like that first couple of seasons of Ghost Hunters, kind of going back to that. Like they started doing stuff where like, it was becoming obvious that like they needed to produce a ghost just about every week, and so it got formulaic real fast, and then like Ghost Adventures started, and that got ridiculous, and there was a whole like rollout when Ghost Hunters came out. Like all of a sudden, every that's our Paranormal State and all these things, which was a decent show too, but like all these different like Ghost Hunters stuff. Ghost Hunters adjacent spin-offs started happening, my favorite of these was I was watching this with my parents one day. My mom was watching this, and it was like Amish ghost stories.
Oh, my.
Told by the Amish. you know, and they had reenactments, okay, like you have in these type of shows. Like these are like haunted or whatever, like or the one that was on Animal Planet. I don't remember what it was called, but that stuff was like really ubiquitous too. And like this one had the reenactments of the Amish, you know, telling their ghost story. Well, then you've got actors playing Amish because Amish can't be on film.
Right.
Playing telling the story, and it just seemed like really more complicated than it really needed to be. So,
yeah, well, it did.
I was just like shaking my head, and like by the time stuff like Mountain Monsters came out, it's just like, oh my god, like
yeah. Well, ghost hunting shows became like Pringles, dude, where it was like, okay, people like Pringles. Let's try every fucking kind of Pringle we can make.
But like,
and so that's what they do with Ghost Hunters. It's like, and it's funny, I mentioned, because I didn't really get into Ghost Hunters when it first started. So I'm like, oh, geez, now next, because it's, and then they all have vote. There's each different demographic ghost hunting type of show. Then there's each like different vocation kind of show where it's like, we're ghost hunting mailmen. And the other one's like, we're ghost hunting architects. Right. It's like, who the fuck? So what? So you're an architect. Who cares? And I made a joke or something on social media, like, oh, geez, next they're going to have ghost hunting plumbers. And they're like, that's what the taps people were who started all this. And I'm like,
right.
So,
they were plumbers. Yeah.
Come full circle. Well, but go ahead.
Well, I remember how weird that stuff got in that community with the ghost hunting community, because all of a sudden after Ghost Hunters was a success, you started seeing more and more people coming out of the woodwork just to get a show.
Oh yeah.
Like, it was like this huge like explosion of ghost hunting. I mean, they've been around obviously, but there was this huge explosion of ghost hunting groups around the same time, 2004, 2005. And then they all were just like, we need to get our own show.
Yeah, that was the whole.
And I remember that Ghostly Talk like stopped doing their thing in 2009. They came back recently, one of the guys, as a podcast, but like they stopped doing their thing in 2009 because everything had just gotten so toxic.
Yeah.
And everybody just had their own show. Everybody was competing with each other, and they were just like, we can't do this anymore. And like, and I'm kind of seeing the same thing now with like, just like in the podcast, you know, sphere, where there's like so many podcasts now. I mean, I've talked about this on another show, but like in 2012, when I started this, I thought I was late to the game. And like you, I mean, like, you know, 2005, you were doing it. Like the Ghostly Talk guys were doing it even before that, even before the word podcast was even really minted. It was just like an internet radio show. But like, I thought I was late to the game then, and that there were like too many podcasts just like mine, and like mine want to get recognition. But now it's just like everybody's got a show, you know. And women are out there starting their own paranormal podcasts. And that's not a sexist statement. That's just a great headline.
That's just a great headline. Yes. Miss B, we're thinking of you, Miss B. So what? Oh yeah. Well, yeah. And what's interesting too, saying this as someone who, and I'm going to sound kind of bitter, but I don't really care all that much. But yeah, it is kind of interesting. Like, as someone who started this out when it was kind of like the equivalent of like a garage band and shit, it's just sort of like astounding, and also like, hey man, because you know, you see, like, I didn't even know about this Call Me Daddy show that Kamala Harris went on, and they're like, it's the second most popular podcast in the world. And the lady who's the host signed a deal with Spotify, and she gets $20 million a year. I'm like, what the fuck? And it's not
the Hawk Tua girl just started her own podcast. Okay.
Yeah. Well,
more power to the Hawk Tua girl for starting her own podcast. Whatever. She's a Tennessee girl. Whatever. But just like, you know, it's become. it's out of control. It's just kind of become ridiculous now.
And it's not even, you're just like competing for people's time and attention span, where it's like back when I started the show, or even back when you started the show, it's like people had more time in their day and week to listen to your show because there weren't like 5,000 fucking options. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Some people, the people that might be otherwise listening to our show are listening to fucking Joe Rogan, because that satisfies their need for fucking weirdness and shit. So in their minds, you know what I mean? And then that spins them off to other shows that don't, So it's the whole podcast scene is so oversaturated. It's like, it's unreal. But you have to, when you get to this point, you have to kind of still do it just for the love of the game. Otherwise, like what you're doing, like you're still doing the show, it's there are other people who kind of get into this, and you see, and they like launch a podcast, and they already have a logo, and they already have like they're on all the different social media things, and they're like, catch us on Instagram and TikTok and YouTube and X and Facebook, and it's like, then they do like 6 episodes and they don't fucking do it anymore.
Yeah, because the creator, we live in a creator culture. We live in this where like, we have this idea now that like, if you don't create, then you must be, why are you not creating? My God.
Interesting.
This is kind of where we're at right now. And it's almost like the alternative is basically, well, don't do that. It's just like
just consume.
But I think it becomes exhausting, and I think the social media is a big part of the exhaustion of that. Absolutely. Because you're always having to try to like, you're there with thousands, millions of other people trying to get your stuff across, and like, after a while, it's just like oversaturation. Like you're not gonna get it across. And like, I think that you and I may have noticed, and we sound like old men screaming at clouds, but like
that's what the show's become these days. But it's
but like you and I have noticed too that just like and we know people, we know people that as potential podcast guests that experience this, that just like they're also burned out because they're having to go on so many podcasts. And like, so they have to like really itemize their time. So like we might not, get those people because they've been on so many, and it just like, it's so much stuff falls through the cracks.
Yeah. It's a whole different world than from when I started, and when you started also. So
yeah. I mean, I think this is where it was always trending. I mean, I was always just like, hey, I would tell people, I was like, this is easy. You'd like, you can do this too. I was always
very part of the problem.
Yeah, I was right. Well, I was always very gung ho about it with people, and I was like, why don't you start your own thing? Do you have your own voice? Because I'm always very much like believe in that DIY ethos, but like now, I feel like that's kind of gone away too, because everything has to be. Look, like in the 90s, all this stuff was like really expressed through music, I think, through like alternative or indie rock or these type of things. And, a lot of it was not, it didn't sound great because the technology really wasn't there, but people did it anyway, even if it sounded terrible. And now what is supposedly DIY is just kind of like, instead of just like, well, you start off at a certain point, you evolve through it, like through Binnall of America and Conspirinormal. I'm sure your sound wasn't as good as it is now, or like there's things that you as an interviewer were not as good at then as you are now, and after nearly 19 years of doing it. but like you don't see that now. Everybody wants everything to be like slick and polished and just like look like a Hollywood production. And it's like that's not how DIY worked. That wasn't the ethos of DIY. It was like, it looked shitty, but like you were doing it, and that was the whole point. And now it's like, well, it's got to look slick, or I won't watch it. And
believe me, you're talking to the guy who used to record the show over the telephone,
over the phone,
up until last October when we finally got the whole modern day setup. And it's like people still are like, it needs to be. You need to have a better room for it. You gotta fucking put up egg shit.
Yeah, have an actual studio, and it just sounds like you're doing it in your house. Well, I am,
right? Exactly.
But that's because, and a lot of that is because that podcasting. Once big media companies realize they can make money off of podcasting, like some of these true crime podcasts that we listen to, like the Yuba City 5 one, that was great. I mean, it's a great podcast.
Yeah.
I loved it, but like it's very well produced. It's very well, it's written out. It's scripted.
Yeah, it's all cut together and shit. But
right. And it's like, but the reason that it is that way and why it's so polished is because these huge media companies, it's just something else that they do. It's not what some guy is trying to do in their basement somewhere.
In their spare time too. What people don't understand also is the lady who got the $20 million to host the show that had Kamala Harris on, and Joe Rogan, who fucking gets like even more money. They're the one and they're the number 1 and 2 pod. Like they don't fucking do anything. They don't do anything really, but show up, do the research. I assume I'll give them, they're the host. They're maybe produce in a sense the show, but they're not like fucking worried about audio levels and the distribution of the show and the team. And even the Yuba County 5 podcast, where it's like that's an amazing production. But it's like that production required time and fucking money that was afforded to the makers of that podcast. Right. That guys like Adam and I, like no one's coming to us and going, here's several thousands of dollars so you don't have to work your fucking regular job, produce this podcast by X date, or you know what I mean? It's like, fuck, man, sure. That would be great.
Sometimes it might be thousands of rubles, but that's a whole other discussion.
Yes.
But like AI is also really changing the game too, a lot, especially with like YouTube. I'm even hearing like stuff about like people doing podcasts through AI now.
I heard shit about that. Yeah, AI podcasts. Yeah.
I mean, there's some history stuff that I watch on YouTube, and I'm like watching it, and I'm like slowly realizing this is an AI generated voice. Like, this is and it gets thousands of views. And it's just somebody just like, it's like a map thing, so like the maps look cool, and like historical animated maps, but like that stuff looks cool, but like why aren't you just narrating it?
Right.
But it's just like, and it's even advertised now that like if you really want the best out of your YouTube channel, use this AI tool for all this narration, and like it's just like, I don't know, it's like really cold and clinical and weird for me to
there's a lot of like gaming the algorithms and shit that just kind of goes on too. Like I heard there was some kind of thing with YouTube where it's like look, on YouTube we just put the static picture up of the graphic for the show and you listen to the show. But like I guess with some of these, a lot of them have video, which we're going to try to start getting into now in year 2 of the revival. So that's cool. And so maybe my sort of tack will change. But like they put apparently I heard somewhere that like if the person's smiling, or if the thumbnail is like the person smiling, or if they're like shocked or whatever, like they all that shit is tailored to getting you to click on it. It's really, it's like, fuck, man, I'm not worry about that shit.
Like so like So like I inhabit this world a little bit because I produce
Nevaeh's
Nightmare, for Nevaeh's channel. And like I'm trying to just think, whenever I post these things, I'm trying to think of like all the keywords I can possibly imagine. But then you gotta title it as like a question, and I gotta have a picture of her doing that same silly stuff.
Yeah,
and
like what?
You're like, huh? What is this? So it's like, no insult to her or anything, but it's like, but this is what you have to do in order to get like the hits and the likes, and it's crazy how people are like gaming that algorithm. It's become, this will really sound like old man screaming at cloud, because it used back in my day, it used to be on YouTube that like if you wanted to find something, you would put in, say I want to watch, I don't know, some Shakespeare play or something. So like Macbeth part 1 or part 2, and you found all the parts, and it was very clearly labeled, this was Macbeth from the BBC or 1954, whatever. Okay. Now it's like you can't find stuff because it's titled, what did the Scottish king do to deserve his fate? It's like you can't find shit. And there was something that Sir Fiel sent me. It was like a show from the 80s, but it was like this guy that was talking about historical stuff, but like it was part 2, and I was like, well, where the fuck is part 1? And eventually I found it, but it was just some, one of those fucking titles, it was just like, so it's become like ridiculously hard if you're looking for that stuff to try to find anything on there anymore, because it's just like all these fucking titles. And you and I on our shows, we just put our title of our show up there. But like on Nevaeh stuff, I'm trying to like, get her more and more hit those algorithms and trying to come up with these titles. It's just, it's just crazy. It's crazy. Try to do that stuff. But like the more bright colors that you have, the more just like, that somebody looking like, you can't see, people can't see, but you're looking like this and looking concerned or like,
It's
you
like,
should do more of that. You should do more of that, Tim. Just like
animated. Yeah. I might have to start doing that.
Yeah.
The movie I was talking about earlier. Well, it's interesting. It's we are old men yelling at clouds, but it's like I mean, you heard the Becky Galentine episode. Listeners here. So I wouldn't necessarily I wouldn't necessarily want to be. Well, I'm kind of happy in my little fiefdom here of Binnall of America, because the alternative is dealing with a lot of fucking crazy people, and also the expectation, like what we're talking about, that you constantly have to stay on top of whatever the thing is. And the movie I was mentioning is I'll just read some of these headlines on the thing. YouTube supernatural sleuths Sam and Colby bridge big screen divide. Who the fuck? Nice title. That one sucked. YouTube star Sam and Colby talk legends of the paranormal. So their movie is Sam and Colby, the legends of the paranormal, and they're like, I assume they mean actual legends, and that they're not calling themselves the legends of the paranormal, because they're like, they look like they're like 19, but they're huge. If you go like on their thing, they have like millions of viewers, millions of like, what a couple generations ago would be like Tiger Beat magazine readers. They're teen heartthrobs. It's like, oh geez, it's like a boy band, but instead they're going to be ghost hunters.
It's a whole new generation. It's just a whole new way of just looking at it all. I mean, you got to think about us. You and I were born in the 70s.
Yeah.
I think you barely made it, but like, we grew up in the 80s, and as the 90s came in, like the internet really just hit, when we were in our early 20s. And then, social media comes around in about 2004, 2005. But you got to think now, like you know, I mentioned Nevaeh. I mean, she's 20 years old. It's like for her, she's never known a world without any of this stuff. You and I got to see it all develop. And now it's like, you know, you've got just these 19, 20-year-old kids that's all they've known. So like they're used to, you know,
having
TikTok and Snapchat and all these different, you know, all these different platforms. And it's like, that's really where it's going to. Like TikTok, we've talked about this before on my show. TikTok really changed the game. Yeah. For everybody else.
Coupled with the pandemic. It was like it took off during the pandemic. Like it was like this perfect storm.
Yep. Because the whole thing about just the short attention span, scrolling through your phone, that, you know, so then, you know, Facebook Meta picked up on that. That's how Instagram is now. That's how YouTube is now. It changed the game, you know, as far as like these short little videos, and like it's all geared towards that now, doing these like short little things, like all of it.
Yeah, and it's weird because, like, I don't even want to go in there, like, that whole site. But it's like, what strikes me, too, is it's not just, like, wacky videos and shit, but, like, it's a very not a niche, but there's a sub-genre, I guess you could say, where they, like, are people who do, like, a 60-second breakdown of, like, some conspiracy theory. Because the very, you know, and they get shit wrong and all this other stuff, and it's just like, oh, my God, but it's really slickly produced and...
With an AI voice, more than likely. Yep.
Old men yell at clouds on tonight's edition of Binnall of America. It is, well, I have a feeling a lot of our listeners are the same way. It's like we did see this transition from, I think I said this when Aaron Gillies was on, or at least I said it when someone was on, but it was like there was a time when like the internet was just like in the fucking room. There was like an internet. There was a room you went to get on the internet. Now it's everywhere, and it's
ubiquitous.
And I think like our generation and the folks that are about our age and older, like we are dying out. That's just natural. But it's like we're the last, you know, who had a foot in the post internet. So we have like kind of, I hope like an appreciation for what this has brought us, but also like this nostalgic feeling for like what it was like before this all happened. And it's someday there'll be people who they'll have no recollection of a world before the internet. It was just a completely fucking different world.
I'll tell you that you know, being around younger people, there is somewhat of a not necessarily a rejection, but more just like burnout on the social media environment. You know, like there's a lot of burnout with a lot of these kids where they have to take a break, and it's like they know like instinctively that like this is not how things are supposed to be. And in fact, there's like this weird generation gap between Gen Z and Gen Alpha now. So like the kids that were born post 2012, post 2010, I would say.
Okay. That's Gen Alpha?
They're considered Gen Alpha. Okay.
Jesus.
But so like, you know, there's a lot of these little kids that are like stuck on these tablets.
Yeah.
And like Gen Z didn't grow up that way. So now we're seeing a whole other generation that's growing up completely immersed in this stuff.
Yes.
And like that cannot be good for the developing brain.
No, can't.
So,
and I say this as a kid who like spent a lot of his childhood like watching TV, but it was like that was different.
Me too.
There was, but again, it was like the TV was in the fucking room. You didn't go when the TV went off, like now, like back then. You would get off the fucking internet. You'd go, all right, I'm going to get on the internet for like an hour tonight and do some shit, but then I'm going to get off the internet and get back into the real world. It's like, it's interesting. I have a very warped perspective on all this. I've kind of come to realize too over the years, is just because I work online all day. So it's like I try to explain this to like my family and friends and shit. It's just like, no, you don't, because they don't hear all the shit that's happening. I'm on X all fucking day. I'm on Facebook all, so I hear all this news as it happens and everything, which is kind of cool. But at the same time, it's like, sometimes it's like, no, you don't understand. Like most of my closest friends live all over the world, and I just talk to them all day online. They're not like in the office with me. They're just people that I talk to like all over the country and all over the world. So it's an interesting, it's interesting to be sort of plugged in all the fucking time. It can be pretty tiring. That's why on the weekends, people might notice I generally try to like unplug from all this stuff and get off of the internet for at least a couple days, so I can just touch grass, as the kids like to say.
Right.
Now we're coming up. We're wrapping it up here. We're coming up on Strange Realities Conference. As we said, it's coming up now in 10 days because this episode is going to be dropping on October 23rd and Wednesday the 23rd. So folks can find out more at strangerealities.com. That's where
strangerealitiesconference.com.
Sorry.
Strangerealitiesconference.com.
Yeah, strangerealitiesconference.com. Punch in Conspirinormal. Go through any of the social media from the folks that you heard of who are going to be there. Steve Berg, myself, Nathan Isaac, Recluse, Steven Snyder, Ren Collier, Josh Cutchin, Brett Rains, Micah Hanks, Kendall Lackey, Nevaeh Tara. They're all going to be there in Nashville on site Friday, Saturday. A lot of us are going to be hanging around on Sunday. So if you're, again, come in, even if you're just in the area for a day trip or whatever, come in and check it out. What are some of the topics? And we'll get to the online people in a minute, but we'll sort of we'll hybridize this. But for folks, because I always want to do this. Maybe we should do this in the future. I don't know necessarily about this time. Sometime, like if you come on my show, I should just put it on you should put it on your podcast feed. If I'm on your show, we put it on your podcast feed. Because even though I'm like, hey, I'm on Conspirinormal this week, I imagine there are people who are Binnall America listeners who don't listen. So if I force them to, like when Apple put the YouTube album on the iPhone. But for the people who didn't hear my appearance on Conspirinormal back in late August, early September, here's what I'm going to be doing at Strange Realities Conference. I'm going to be talking about, and what I love about this event, not only that Adam brings me down to Nashville every year, puts me up, takes me around the city, and Nashville is just an incredibly wonderful place. There's a reason why so many tourists go there. It's like a tourist mecca. It's just awesome. It's kind of like a party city, but without that edge of like a New Orleans or Las Vegas. It's kind of it's a little bit like an LA of the South, where it's like, but instead of movies and TV shows, it's music. So it's like,
right.
It's awesome. Nashville. It's iconic. And what I love about what Adam has done with this event is every year, I forget who it was, maybe George Carlin, but he would come out with these specials all the time. My whole thing is, like, every time I come down to Strange Realities, I have to come up with a new hour of material for this event. And that's what I love about it. It's a huge challenge for me. And now I have this, like, weird portfolio of, like, 5 or 6 presentations I can make. So if you're out there playing at the conference or anyone else, over the course of the year, he lets me do whatever I want. Over the years, I've done the Flat Earth. I've done the Forest Fen Treasure. I've done the Yuba County 5. Last year, I did Loch Ness Monster webcam feuds and another different weird treasure hunt. So Adam gives me carte blanche to do whatever I want to talk about. So kind of knowing this was probably the last year in Nashville, not necessarily knowing when I could put out a proverbial special again or comedy album or what. I kind of look at these as albums in a way. I'm like, well, here's one I really have thought about doing for a long time and never got around to doing it. So this year in Nashville at Strange Realities Conference, I'm going to be doing a presentation on sitcoms and UFO sightings, or UFO sightings on classic sitcoms. And just sort of look at these episodes. We've got the Golden Girls. Josh Cutchin unearthed a fantastic episode of Newhart that has a UFO sighting. There's an episode of Wings, the old NBC show that was hugely influential on me as a kid. Of course, the Brady Bunch episode that is pretty iconic, and a really bizarre episode of the Dukes of Hazzard. I think that's going to be where I land on the shows that I discuss in the presentation. But at Paramania, we were driving around. We had like 6 of us in the car, and so I'm like, all right, guys, here's what I'm doing. Can you come up? So people started kind of throwing other UFO shows that may wind up in there, but it's the kind of thing that almost could produce a sequel. So that's what I'm going to be doing. UFO sightings on sitcoms. And after that, we're going to be doing, speaking of sequels, we're going to be doing another round. I got to get on that, start putting the work into that. Do you still have my buzzers there at home?
I still have the buzzers.
Oh, good. I was afraid I was going to have to buy new ones.
I'm actually looking right at them. They're like right across.
Excellent. Because this year at Strange Realities, and this is, people were raving about this last year, and it's a lot of fun. I think the people who were watching streaming really enjoyed it too. It's Forty and Feud Part 2. Forty and Feud. It's our take on Family Feud, where I play Steve Harvey, and we have a panel of 5 paranormal speakers and a panel of a family of, not necessarily real family, but a group of attendees. It's attendees versus speakers. Forty and Feud 2. It's played like Family Feud. Like, 45 minutes or so. And it's a lot of fun. It really is a lot of fun. So that's what I'm going to be doing at the event. I don't know how much you know about. Oh, you there, buddy?
Yeah, I'm here. You cut out on me.
Yeah, you did too for a minute there. That was weird. Yeah. All right. Well, do you have any idea what some of the other speakers are going to be covering?
Yeah. So one of the things about, you mentioned this, one of the things about Strange Realities is I let the speakers pick their own topics.
Yeah.
And so I don't fully at the moment know what everyone is going to do, but I do know what some are going to do. And we actually, in our preview episodes, which were probably by the time this is out, I think we'll have done the last one. But those will be on YouTube, and they're also are going to be on the podcast feed as well. But I have the speakers usually reveal those. So, so I do know that obviously know what you're going to do. Joshua Cutchin is going to be doing something on paranormal hoaxes.
Oh, nice.
And he told me this last night. Paranormal hoaxes that can cause actual paranormal activity and how the relationship of that is.
Interesting.
Brent Rains, who's been doing this for a long time, he's going to be talking about his experiences dealing with like high strangeness cases.
Yeah.
Brent has been, the guy has been like, since he's in his 70s now, and he's been doing this since he was a teenager in like the 1960s.
Yeah.
So he's been doing this for a long time and publishing, I think, since the 80s, I think, Alternate Perceptions magazine. So he's been doing this for a while. Steven Snyder, also known as the Great Recluse.
Yes. He
will also be there. He is going to be doing something on Shakespeare mysteries.
Oh, wow.
Inspired by a building in DC that he visited.
Wow.
Nevaeh, who's the youngest of the group, as I mentioned before, she's a mortuary student, so she's studying to be a mortician. Mm-hmm. And she's going to be doing something on 19th century Victorian funerary practices. Those are the ones that I know at the moment.
All right.
But I will say some of the online speakers, Katie, I do know what hers is going to be about.
Yeah.
She's going to be doing stuff on 1970s horror films.
Oh, wow. See, this is what I love.
Yeah.
This is what I love about Strange Realities, folks. We got sitcoms, UFOs on sitcoms, Shakespeare conspiracies, 70s horror movies, Kutch talking hoaxes. This is such a diverse array of topics. I'm excited just to be in attendance. I'm not even blowing smoke here. This is like, holy shit, I want to hear all this stuff. Yeah, go on.
And Greg Bishop will be doing something on UFOs and looking at stuff on a a new paradigm of investigating UFOs. Timothy Renner will be doing a thing on disappearing evidence. So evidence of paranormal cases such as Bigfoot, UFO, stuff like that has just disappeared, never seen again. Okay. So those are the ones that I know. And Surfiel is going to be doing a paranormal. It's like a conspiracy, make your own conspiracy kind of like card game.
Oh, wow.
So he's going to give you I will let him more explain it, but he's going to be passing out some cards. So it's kind of like choose your own conspiracy. So You're going to get it's going to be kind of like a weird conspiracy divination thing.
Interesting.
Myself, I'm going to be starting everything off on Friday. I'm going to give a presentation on the miracles of Fatima and the Ariel School incident in Zimbabwe in the 90s, how those are similar and how those are influenced by social pressures in a particular society and given in a historical context.
Interesting.
And adding in something like the Boston clown sighting wave of 1981, which I'm sure you're familiar with.
Yeah, I had a friend. Who saw a clown. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Back in the 80s, when it happened?
The later 80s, I think.
Okay.
So when him and his brother were kids, and it so scarred him that he later got a clown tattoo on his arm. So
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was very odd. Joe Cosentino, God rest his soul. In addition to the folks we just previewed, also Nathan Isaac, Ren Collier, Micah Hanks, Kendall Lackey, and then on the online part, Soraya Askath. We mentioned Tim Renner, Katie Andrews, Robert Guffey, and Greg Bishop. So all that cool content. And as I said at the very beginning of the show, what's really cool is, because I said this to the guys in Wisconsin because that festival sounded fucking awesome. And it was like UFOs, pro wrestling, all kinds of crazy stuff. And there's a DB Cooper Con coming up in November that I'm like, I would love to take part in that, but I'm not going to be able to. And just listening to, in each of those instances, I'm like, oh man. And I'm sure there are people listening right now who are like, oh man, that sounds awesome. So if you're in Miami, or you're in Bismarck, or you're in Poughkeepsie, and you can't make it down to Nashville in 10 days, you can go to Strange Realities Conference, sign up, get the stream. It's really well done. Watch it at your convenience. Check in on the things. You don't have to sit there all day. You don't have to sit there for 6 hours if you don't want to. You can watch a couple, whatever, go on with your day, come back later and watch the rest when you want. Watch a couple late at night or something like that, however you want to do it. But you have access to all these presentations. And if you're within driving distance, I can't stress this enough, folks. This is the last time we're going to do this in Nashville. This is the last rodeo.
Yep.
And God only knows what's going to happen at the last rodeo, but it's going to really be happening. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's really, God bless you, Adam and Surfiel for doing this. it's become a highlight of my year, and it's become sort of just, part of my life. My annual trip down to Nashville to see my buddies and to party and have a good time and talk about weird shit. I'm a little sad that it's the last rodeo, but at the same time, it's like, let's do it, man. Let's go out. We've really we've made something special here, and let's celebrate that this year down in Nashville. So, Strange Realities. Go ahead.
Let's go out. Let's go out with a bang. Let's go out with a bang.
Absolutely. So the website is strangerealitiesconference.com and conspiranormal.com. So that's where you can find out more on the show. Although, like Adam, his website's become rather dormant because mine, I think, pulls up a fucking white screen. And Adam's hasn't been updated since like April of 2 years ago. So
I should probably take care of that.
Yeah.
We so actually ticket prices. So we have $70 get you into, like, if you're coming there to Nashville, $70 get you into the whole thing. That's all 3 days. That's on site Friday and Saturday, and then online. So that gets you into the whole thing. $30 for online only, and that's all 3 days as well. And then we're going to have day passes available for $40 on Friday, $40 on Saturday.
All right. And on that note, Adam, I can't thank you enough for coming back on the show. Really looking forward to seeing you again down in Nashville, and really enjoyed the conversation tonight. It was a lot of fun. So, yeah, folks, go out and get your tickets to Strange Realities, and we'll be whooping it up down in Nashville in just a few short days at this point.
Thanks for having me on, Tim. I really appreciate it. It's always good to be on your show, and always good to have you on mine as well. And I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next few, I guess from when you're doing this next week.